Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me directly through benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcasts. People of Distinction is an internationally syndicated show solely due to the love and support that you all continue to show. We're available across all major podcast distributors, and like I mentioned, people, if you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. Now sit back and strap in because we are delighted to showcase this next guest on our network. And on the line with us today, we have the impressive C.A. Kinnee. And we're going to be discussing her amazing novel, A Path of Fire, The Prophecy of Heligon, Book 1. Now, while you're at it, Book 2 is called A Trail of Embers. You're going to want to head on over to Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, pick up your copies, get lost in these amazing journeys. But while you're at it, in addition to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, check out her personal website, people, because it really is a one-stop shop for everything that she has in store. Now, Carol has been putting in some work, and when you head on over to her website, carolkinnee.com, you're going to be greeted with all of it, all right? Because in addition to these 2 novels, she has another 4 books that she's written, right? I mean, truly a magnificent individual. Head on over to her personal website and get lost in everything that she has in store. Once again, that's carolkinnee.com. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Carol here on the line. People, like I mentioned, the 2 novels that we have in store today, A Path of Fire, The Prophecy of Heligon, Book 1, and then of course, Book 2, A Trail of Embers, it's gonna be enough to keep you occupied for a while. It is something that is gonna keep you at the edge of your seat. It's something that, as I was reading them, I kept thinking back to Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, and other epic adventures like that, because this book has so many semblances that are very, very relatable to those narratives. And if you're fans of Tolkien and other books that he's written, this is going to be right up your alley, okay? Something there that is truly remarkable, because one of the best things that this book offers, or these books offer rather, is it's purely for entertainment, man. And I think that is something that is very much overlooked right now, because we have a lot going on, people. There's a lot of division in the world. There's a lot of hardship. There's a lot of stress that we're all feeling. So books like this that are creative and written in such a wonderful way, and again, for purely entertainment's sake, is something that you're going to want to latch on to, and it's something that is remarkably beneficial. But let's say fantasy isn't your thing, right? Fantasy novels is not for you. Well, don't worry. She has romance novels as well. Something truly for all readers. Head on over to her website and see what I'm talking about. But at the end of the day, Carol is the expert, man. It's her books. She's written it. She's going to be able to articulate it all much better than I ever could. Sit back and strap in. Carol, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Carol, thank you very much for asking. Thank you even more for being here. Your books, A Path of Fire and A Trail of Embers, are truly riveting. I really do mean that. They're nonstop page turners and truly a gift that we all need at the moment. Like I mentioned at the beginning, there's enough happening to make anyone want to escape and get lost in a good book. And you've delivered 2 of them, right? So it is truly something that is remarkably gratifying, wonderfully entertaining, and we're thoroughly looking forward to this. So thank you for being here with us to discuss them, Carol. Before we go any further, I think it's important to start off with a great foundational piece and start off by learning a little bit more about you and your background. So take it away whenever you're ready. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Myself and my background. Well, I've been writing since I was little. I remember back in elementary school, my mom was a teacher and she'd give me empty booklets to play with and write on. And instead of just drawing pictures, I would start writing stories. So I filled a lot of books and probably a lot of garbage cans at the time too. But I learned from that I really do love to tell a story. I really love to entertain. And it wasn't just writing, it was oral too, as far as like, I would tell my sisters big, long, drawn out stories when we'd go away on trips in the summertime. And, I'd entertain them when we were doing all the dishes and housework and stuff like that at home growing up. I really, really do love to write. I really do love to tell a story. And I think my brain's full of stories, so I've got lots of ammunition to keep going.
Love that. Carol, you've already started to go into this, and you began by telling us a little bit more about your background and the love for the written word, right? And where that comes from and your mother's influence in it all. Well, continuing along those lines, Carol, what inspired you to write these two impressive novels?
Well, at the time I started to write A Trail of Embers, I started with A Trail of Embers, and I actually then went back and wrote A Path of Fire. But when I started writing that book, I was working, I'm a nurse, I was working in a critical care unit, super, super busy. We have two daughters. Our daughters were in their 10, 11, 12, 13 kind of range of age. Mm-hmm. They were really busy. Everything was going on around me, and I just needed something for me. So I took a course on writing and then started writing A Trail of Embers at that time. So then when I finished A Trail of Embers, I had questions about where my characters came from and what their real history was that couldn't be covered in that book. So that's when I went back and wrote A Path of Fire, because I just wanted to answer the questions and sort of round it out in my mind about what was going on in my storyline. So that's what happened. That's how I ended up. That was my inspiration. Just time on my own, sneak away, go camping, take a book and actually write, handwrite what I was doing at the time, because it was we didn't have power for bringing a laptop with us, because our trailer, we don't camp with power, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, did lots of handwriting. Got up before everybody else.
Carol, let's go into your titles next. Because listen, there's something about them. They're intriguing, they're bold, they offer great insight into what to expect without giving anything away, right? I think you've balanced that beautifully. Well, I'm curious, why do those titles and the book covers associated with them, why did you choose them to be the representation for your book? And talk to us about how they represent your series.
Well, again, because I wrote A Trail of Embers first, I wanted to have something that carried on along that fire line. And then I thought, well, it's a path of fire, because that's when the dragon actually comes into being, like Shakala, the dragon from my book. Mm-hmm. That's the main character in A Path of Fire meets the dragon. So I thought, yeah, fire, dragons, they're kind of tiptoeing down a path through the darkness and seeing the light. So just that really, really made me follow that direction in my thought process. And I thought, and I don't know, if I wrote a third one, I don't know what I would call it. Smoldering flames, I don't know.
Well, listen, there are so many other questions that I could ask. Let's not hold off any longer, okay? Without further ado, let's jump right into the book. A Path of Fire, the Prophecy of Heligon. Tell us a little bit more about it, Carol.
Well, the story is really about Danica of Ramarn. She's the daughter from a long range of mages. She has a brother who becomes the high mage of the country after her father dies. And he's kind of running towards the dark. He's definitely a dark mage. He's looking for immortality, and where he sees immortality coming from is the blood. He needs the blood of the dragon for that. As far as Danica is concerned, it has more white magic. Her mother was more of a white magic practitioner. So Danica's very much like her. But her brother Jacon realizes that he needs to use her white magic to get the dragon. So that's his plan. But he decides that he'll force her to marry one of his henchmen. So she basically escapes from that and runs away and meets up with an escaped convict and a spy in the kingdom that they're in. And they kind of go on the lam together to try and get away. The dragon's helping them. They eventually get caught by the evil mage and brought back, and she's to be forced into marrying his henchman. And they manage, with the help of other people, to escape again. And then kind of find their way through the trees and the forest and the kind of tunnels around the place, get out and eventually come to safety. But at that point, they realize they have to go back and rescue the dragon. So then there's a battle over the dragon and saving the dragon. And that's kind of how it ends.
You know, Carol, curiosity for myself with this next one, but listen, your books are by no means the first fantasy novels to be written, right? I mean, at the beginning of the show, I plugged Tolkien of just one of many authors, but that one comes to mind. The Lord of the Rings series, I think there's remarkable similarities between your book and the epic journey that it possesses. But in your opinion, Carol, what sets your books apart from others in its genre?
Well, I think because when I started to write this book, I didn't intend to, this book, the book before it, I didn't intend to write a series of books. I wasn't aiming to be epic fantasy world building. I just wanted to tell a story. That was my main goal. So I think maybe that is seen in the fact that you don't necessarily have to read them in order. Like, they come together and the characters, you see characters reoccur in them, but they're actually separate entities as far as the storylines. Mm-hmm. So it's, and I don't think that I'm going to go book 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 either. So that kind of sets it apart, because they could be standalone or read in sequence. I think people would enjoy them more to read them in sequence, because you kind of have unlike me, the writer, who had to go back and go, I want to know where these characters came from. Mm-hmm. I mean, now you know where they came from. You don't have to wait for me to write it.
People, I'm telling you, these are books you need to add to your shelf. We're here on the line once again with the impressive C.A. Kinnee. We're discussing her amazing book, A Path of Fire, The Prophecy of Helagon, Book 1. Also check out Trail of Embers, Book 2. But remember, there's much, much more in store. Check out her 4 other novels that she has written, because I'm telling you, there's a lot to take advantage of. And if you want to do it, it's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble. But check out her personal website that is truly a one-stop shop for everything that she has in store. And that's carolkinnee.com. Head on over there today. Find out what I'm talking about, okay? Carol, as we transition here, let's focus on the positives first and foremost. Curious, what would you say throughout this entire process was a highlight for you, or something that you weren't anticipating prior to beginning?
Well, I really loved creating a fantasy world. Mm-hmm. I loved creating the creatures in it. I loved creating the characters in it. I'm a West Coast girl, so I love to be outside, and we love to hike. And it's the background of it is very much like that West Coast feel, as far as like tall cedars and rocky shores and ferns and fauna, all that nice dark green wood kind of lighting trickling through the treetops, that type of thing. So I really enjoyed that. And then I did a lot of kind of looking around and hiking in that time frame and taking pictures. So I have a lot of tree pictures I've discovered. I thought one day maybe I'll make a calendar and I could call it the Calendar of Helagon or something. But that was a highlight, was doing all that and finding my way through building these characters.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, we touched up on the highlight. So the opposite side of that coin, Carol, would logically be, talk to us about what you would say was the more challenging aspects of this journey.
The challenge is, I decided early on that I was going to make a book, and I was going to make up all sorts of words to describe my creatures and my characters and places and magic and spells and all that kind of thing. But when you're writing a long fantasy novel and you're inventing words, you definitely need a glossary. So that was something that I really had to go and keep track and find all these words and make a definition for all the words, because I thought, if I have to keep these straight, then I have to leave a glossary for other people so that they'll know what they are, because they're not the writers, so they have no idea what I'm talking about. So that was actually kind of fun in the end, but it's kind of a lot of going back on it to track through and find these words. And the pronunciations, because who knows how to pronounce half those words that I kind of created.
Right. Well, as I mentioned a number of times, I'm telling you, it reminds me of the Lord of the Rings series, right? And the dedication and commitment that went into establishing an entire world. I mean, it is truly impressive. And Carol, I'm going to tell you, that investment that you've made for these books are truly inspiring, right? Very, very impressive. And now I want to go into that development a little further. All right, Carol, is there a character that you've created that you'd say you relate to the most?
The one character that I actually really love was a character I created in the second book, A Trail of Embers. And then, of course, I had to come up with where he came from, too, because he would have been much younger during the Path of Fire. So his name is Mitrio. He's kind of in the second book, like A Trail of Embers, he's like an assassin. He's hired by the Dark Mage to do his bidding kind of thing. And that's fine, just pay him, he's happy, everything's cool with that, right? Until he discovers that he just can't go along with the mage any longer. Mm-hmm. And he helps the character in that book. But in The Path of Fire, when I was starting, because I loved his character from the very beginning, I got to play with making him younger and finding out where he came from. And I find that he just had such a smart mouth, and it was like he said sarcastic things on a regular basis, and he was I just thought he was really kind of a comedic, but he was also like a big guy and very powerful and very smart, very much when they're in the trees and they're going through the forest, he knows exactly where to put his feet so he doesn't step on a branch or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Whereas Danica, the character trying to follow him, she's just like tripping over everything and making so much noise that birds are taking off, and he's just looking at her and shushing her and getting obviously sick and tired of her, but that's fine because she was sick and tired of him by that point too. So just kind of found him to be a bit of a comedic effect, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I just liked his sarcastic mouth.
Carol, my background is in filmmaking. A lot of my listening audience members, they already are aware of this. And I, unfortunately, was never blessed with the artistic expression from a writing standpoint, right? But given my background in film, I've always lived in my imagination. And my follow-up question that I have for you is diving into that imagination a little bit more for you. Kel, if you had the opportunity to have your novels be developed into a film or a television series, which aspects of the story would you be most excited to see brought to life?
Well, obviously the backdrop, because it's just like I said, it's that lush green forest and, sparkling ponds and the heavy hanging moss and all that. So that kind of really great color for a backdrop. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see the interactions between the characters really brought to life, because between Danica and Alian in the book, there's always kind of banter, but there's also kind of that attraction to each other. Mm-hmm. And then with Mitrio, he can see the attraction and he just goes out of his way to kind of annoy Alian, right? Pretend that he's flirting with her and things like that. And I would just like to see the whole interactions between all the characters come out in that, if that happened.
Mm. Carol, I want to take an opportunity and go a little bit further in depth with your writing process. Now, how did you go about developing this fantasy world? Because again, it's vast. It is so intricate and it is impressive what you've done. But I'm curious, while establishing that, how did you also make sure that this fantasy world was still going to be relatable to your readers to explore?
I think I like to make my characters very real. Like they do stupid things like we do. They make mistakes. They get cranky. They get clumsy. They get embarrassed. All those types of things that we normally do. And I really like to bring that out in my characters, no matter what I'm writing. If I'm writing my romantic suspense, I always kind of have a little bit of comedic bits to it, right? Like I kind of like one-liners sometimes, and I think that's how people tend to live. They kind of joke around. They're not serious all the time. And even, I think maybe being a nurse, I have that dark humor. So like when bad stuff's going down. Sometimes somebody makes a remark that nobody else would find funny, but like the staff that are there kind of find it funny. So I think maybe that leaks through sometimes in my writing.
Carol, listen, we have discussed these two magnificent books in the series, but rest assured, people, like I mentioned, those are not the only ones that Carol has, all right? Because when you head on over to carolkinnee.com, I mentioned it already, I'm going to mention it again, you're going to find 4 other books that she's written. And I'm telling you, you're going to want to add them to your shelf as well, all right? Now, Carol, you have accomplished so much already, but I'm curious, in addition to the 6 books that you currently have, tell us either a little bit more about one of those or what's upcoming. I mean, listen, Carol, what is next for you?
Well, what's next for me is I'm going to do a series of books that are ghost stories and modern day romances of the same thing, but all are going to be based in England and Wales and Ireland. I was away on a trip last year, and I really love history and searching through old graveyards and looking at castles and going through. And so everywhere I went, it would kind of make my imagination start to roll, which is a terrible thing because then I start thinking of another book. So right now I'm working on one that's set in 1850 Whitechapel, London. And it's a ghost story, at the same time, modern day romance on a construction site where one of the townhouses is actually haunted from the 1850s. And the construction crew is kind of weirded out by it, but nobody really knows the true story on it. So it's just a discovery of that coming through there. And the Mrs. Claus Contract, that's the last book that I wrote. It's kind of a Christmas Hallmarky type movie, the kind of feel-good romance. It's funny, it's kind of, it's comedic. Love stories up front and the most important thing in it. Gets you in the Christmas spirit. It takes place on a Christmas tree farm in a little town called Christmasville. So you can imagine lots of hot chocolate and lots of eggnog and Christmas cookies and all those fun things, all those things that kind of you really love about Christmas are in it.
People, listen, this is only the beginning. It doesn't end here. All right, we're closing out now because you already know where you gotta go, but understand that this is just the precipice. Again, we're here on the line with the impressive C.A. Kinnee. You're gonna wanna head on over to Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, carolkinnee.com, and gather it all. Remember, what we discussed today, A Path of Fire, The Prophecy of Heligon, Book 1. Look out for Book 2, A Trail of Embers, the moment you finish that. But don't forget about the other ones that she has available. Remember, there's 4 others. Hopefully much, much more on the horizon that Carol will have available and has available at this moment. If fantasy isn't your thing, don't worry about it. Carol's got you covered because there's a lot more there. Romance, so much more. People, she's impressive, all right? I know she's impressive. I know you know that she's impressive because you've been listening to the discussion that we've had. So now it's on you. Head on over there, pick up your copies, and keep in mind, holidays are right around the corner. So these books are great to add to your shelf, but also make fantastic gifts to add to someone else's. And you know where to go. Pick up your copies, get lost in all of them. Carol, this has been a true pleasure. Really, I do mean that. An absolute delight and such an honor. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
And thanks for having me.